Hello all, my name is Tom Binder and I'm a research scientist out of the Hammond Bay Biological Station. And I'm also the interim director of the Great Lakes Acoustic Telemetry Observation System. I apologize for not being able to attend this meeting in person, but I'm actually at another meeting in Ontario this week. But I would like to thank the group for this opportunity today to talk about the current status of telemetry in Lake Michigan, as well as the potential we have to really expand telemetry efforts in the lake over the next couple of years. I know most of you will be familiar with acoustic telemetry, but for those in the audience that might not be, I'll just provide over the next few slides a brief overview of the technology, as well as its applications to fisheries research in the Great Lakes. I think of acoustic telemetry as a high-tech mark recapture method. It has two primary components. The first are the transmitters, which are attached to the fish and transmit a unique code that identifies a specific individual. The second component are the receivers, which listen for, decode, and log the transmissions from those tags. Now, the primary ways that acoustic telemetry differs from traditional mark recapture methods are one, that it provides a higher rate of recapture with multiple observations per individual, and two, that it provides a greater ability to have more uniformity and consistency in sampling. There are a couple different kinds of acoustic telemetry that have been applied in the Great Lakes. The first is called presence-absence telemetry. This kind of telemetry involves a solitary receiver and can be either passive, meaning that the receiver listens for transmitters while remaining stationary, or active or mobile, meaning the receiver moves among locations and listens for transmitters. With presence-absence telemetry, detection of a transmitter on a receiver tells researchers that the transmitter was within the range or detection range of the receiver, which can vary from hundreds of meters to several kilometers depending on a number of variables. In subsequent analyses, the location of the receiver is usually assumed to be the position of the fish, so generally this type of telemetry is used to study more broad-scale movements. Passive presence-absence telemetry is the most commonly used method in the Great Lakes. Very rarely does a study use a single receiver, but instead researchers typically track the movements of fish among locations using an array or network of receivers. Several different receiver network configurations have been used in the Great Lakes, and which configuration is selected has depended on which specific research question is being asked. But generally, we have seen a natural evolution in the Great Lakes from spatially limited research questions that used targeted deployments at locations of interest to more broad scale and basin-wide questions that have used receiver lines and grids. Now, there's no one configuration that suits all research questions, so often a combination of these configurations has been applied within each lake. The second kind of telemetry that has been used in the Great Lakes is called fine-scale positional telemetry. This type of telemetry requires that each transmission be heard simultaneously on 3 or more receivers, and then the difference in the time it takes for the transmission to travel to each of those receivers can be used to triangulate the precise location of the fish, usually to within less than 10 meters. Now, because of the need for overlapping detection ranges, studies that use fine-scale positioning usually deploy very dense receiver arrays, and often those arrays are seasonal. Now, in the Great Lakes, positional telemetry has been used less commonly than presence-absence telemetry, but there have been a number of studies focused primarily on mapping 3D migration pathways within rivers, or fine-scale habitat use, particularly during spawning seasons. Now, obviously, telemetry isn't necessarily the best tool for every research question, but it has proven itself effective in a wide range of applications. The ability to track individuals and to get multiple observations per individual at multiple spatial scales means that telemetry can address questions that can't be addressed using traditional mark recapture methods. In addition, the high detection rate or capture rate of tagged fish on receivers often means that answers come faster than they do with traditional methods. Now, the primary downside of acoustic telemetry is the cost of the equipment, which means that sample sizes tend to be smaller than they are in traditional mark recapture studies. So in the Great Lakes, acoustic telemetry is now being used commonly to study population dynamics, behavior, and ecology of fish populations. Telemetry has often been used as a complement to traditional methods and to test model assumptions or to address questions that aren't possible using traditional methods. Interestingly, in recent years, we've seen study questions get more broad, and there have been a gradual increase in studies focused not only on describing the behavior of the fish, but also trying to better understand why fish do what they do. As I've already alluded, there's been a boom in the use of acoustic telemetry in the Great Lakes over the last 15 years. As more and more researchers adopted the technology, it became clear that there was a need for coordination among researchers. And as a result, the Great Lakes Acoustic Telemetry Observation System, or GLADOS as it's known to most people, was formed in 2010 and has seen exponential growth over the last decade plus. So broadly speaking, GLADOS is a binational network of researchers that work collaboratively to use telemetry to understand fish behavior and address pressing management needs. GLADOS was formed on the back of 3 GLERE-funded projects back in 2010. But today the network has 371 members, 215 of which have active telemetry projects in the basin. Programmatically, GLADOS falls under the Science Directorate at the Great Lakes Fishery Commission under the leadership of Andrew Muir, who is the GLC Science Director. GLADOS is administered by the GLC in partnership with Michigan State University and the U.S. Geological Survey. The GLADOS core team, who are pictured here, is responsible for administering the program and ensuring that GLADOS continues to serve the Great Lakes telemetry community and resource managers. So you might be asking, what does GLADOS do? Broadly speaking, GLADOS services the Great Lakes community, with our services falling under 5 main categories. First and foremost, we help to coordinate telemetry research in the basin, and we do this by facilitating communication among researchers through meetings and workshops. We also maintain a website and help to liaise with resource managers. GLADOS also provides a variety of data services to researchers, including maintaining a basin-wide database used for sharing detections and an R package to help PIs summarize and visualize their data. We also provide technical assistance to researchers, have active research programs, and support studies in the Great Lakes through an equipment loan program. So here's a map showing the current state of the GLADOS receiver network as of February 2025. As you can see, the network is extensive and we have lake-wide coverage in 3 of the 5 Great Lakes. On the map, points that are black remained in place between 2023 and 2024. Those in red were removed in 2024, and those that are blue were added in 2024. In Lake Michigan, you can see that there is a dense receiver grid coverage at the north end of the lake, while coverage at the south end of the lake is focused mainly in rivers. To give a broad sense of the variety of studies currently being conducted in Lake Michigan, I used the GLADOS website to discover what projects are ongoing in the lake and have listed the species that have been tagged in each region. Now, I'll apologize in advance if I missed any studies that should be on this map, and I also encourage folks that are interested in learning more about these studies to visit the GLADOS website and check out the project pages. There you'll typically find information on specific study objectives, see the study timelines, and find contact information for PIs. So starting at the north end of the lake, the extensive receiver infrastructure in northern Lake Michigan is maintained largely in support of studies on whitefish, ciscos, and lake trout. However, the Green Bay and surrounding receivers also support studies on northern pike, white suckers, smallmouth bass, and burbot. At the south end of the lake, looking at the southeast side of the lake, tribal agencies tend receivers in the rivers there to study the movements of sturgeon, while on the southwest side of the lake, receivers are maintained for studies on sturgeon, smallmouth bass, bluegill, and carp. What is hopefully obvious from the last couple of slides is that while Lake Michigan does not yet have the same spatial receiver coverage as some of the other Great Lakes, enthusiasm for acoustic telemetry in Lake Michigan seems to be on the rise, as is the number of researchers undertaking telemetry studies. So one of the reasons I'm presenting to this group today is that I believe the Lake Michigan community has a real opportunity over the next couple of years to come together to determine the trajectory of the next phase of telemetry research in Lake Michigan, and more specifically, to build a collaborative lake-wide telemetry program. So this opportunity is coming about as a result of the winding down of some of the larger scale studies at the north end of the lake. And as of now, receivers around the Northern Refuge and Grand Traverse Bay are committed to remain there until 2027, after which there's a possibility they could be redistributed to other areas of the lake to support new studies. So, given funding timelines and such, it seems the time is now to start conversations on what are the most important questions that could be answered with telemetry and to begin a coordinated effort to develop studies and proposals to guide the redistribution of the receiver network. So, as I mentioned earlier, obviously the questions are what should dictate the receiver network design, and Lake Michigan doesn't necessarily need to go the same route as the other lakes and form a lake wide grid if the questions don't support it. But just to give you a sense of what's possible, I've sketched out on the right here what it would take to cover Lake Michigan with a 25-kilometer grid, which is similar to the grid found in Lake Huron. And the 84 receivers needed for this grid is only about half of what might become available in 2027. So I think there is room here to potentially think big. So, how might we go about this? In my mind, there are 3 points of discussion that need to occur, and I've listed them here in the order that I think they should occur in. First, like most research efforts, we need to start by identifying and prioritizing important questions that could be addressed with acoustic telemetry. Now, a group of researchers started brainstorming possible questions during the Lake Michigan session of the GLADYS annual meeting a couple weeks ago, but it quickly became clear to us that to ensure relevance to management, the discussions needed to include both researchers and managers, and that there should be representation from all agencies. Second, with the list of questions in hand, the next step is to determine what configuration or configurations would be most effective at addressing as many of the questions as possible. Lastly comes the implementation. This is where coordination and collaboration will become critically important. How will the receiver infrastructure be maintained? This will include discussions on items like vessel time, crew availability, and general maintenance costs. So where do we go from here? At the GLADS meeting, it was suggested that the summer LMTC meeting in July would be the perfect venue for a discussion on the future of acoustic telemetry in Lake Michigan. So I spoke with Susan, and she also agreed that LMTC would be a good venue and has indicated that she would schedule time for this discussion on the agenda. So you can look for more on that in the near future. In the meantime, we also felt that the best way to be efficient at LNTC was to hold a virtual brainstorming meeting in advance so that LNTC could focus more on planning and coordination and less on brainstorming. So to make the best use of that time, we'll be asking attendees to do a little homework before the meeting, basically to ensure that they come prepared with their ideas, comments, and considerations. We've tried to do this in the past a couple times, and without that advanced thinking, um, it was really hard to get discussions going. So I think that homework assignment will be important. Now, I volunteered to take the lead on organizing the virtual meeting, which will likely occur sometime in late May or June. I'm currently working with others to assemble a list of potential attendees. So if you are out there and interested in participating in the discussions, please shoot me an email at the address listed here, and I'll add you to the invite list. And with that, I'll end the talk and thank you all for your attention. I apologize again that I wasn't able to attend in person, but please feel free to contact me with any comments, questions, or concerns. And with that, I thank you again and enjoy the rest of the meeting.